Hey there, thanks for watching. In this video, I'm going to be talking about my road to financial independence, some of the struggles I'm having right now, and very specific solutions that I am putting in place to deal with those struggles. So if that sounds interesting to you, then just stick around. If this is your first time stopping by, then welcome to Well Behaved Wallet. On this channel, we talk about achieving financial independence, especially on a low income. We share strategies, achievements, and challenges, all while encouraging each other toward our goals. If that sounds interesting to you, would love to have you subscribe and turn on the notifications so you don't miss any videos. So financial struggles are no surprise. It is no surprise that you would struggle financially because dealing with money is one of the hardest things you have to do as an adult, or really as a person in general. Managing money is one of the most difficult topics in adult life, period. One of my biggest struggles and the journey to financial independence is the allocation of resources. So I made this decision a while back that even though I might be of humble means right now, I am not going to stay here. I decided that I'm only going to struggle with things that rich people struggle with. And I know for a fact that rich people also struggle with the allocation of resources. This is a huge topic at any income level. I wanted to get in the habit of struggling in a positive and productive manner, recognizing where I fall short and then encouraging myself to do better. That's the goal. So I actually have an illustration for you of how I know that wealthy people, how rich people struggle with their money. I'm kind of a student of people with real wealth, not just like pretend wealth that like to show that they're wealthy and spend their money on flashy things. I try to study people that are like those undercover millionaires or those secret millionaires who you would never think walking down the street would have a lot of money, but actually have tons of money. I heard from a bank teller that the people that looked like they had money with like flashy cars and with the watches and the bling and the looking all fly, those were the people that had to like kite their payments from one account to the other and were always asking for additional lines of credit and who couldn't pay their bills. Where it was the people that came in with like calloused hands and who drove Oldsmobiles. Who drives an Oldsmobile? And had like beat up baseball caps and wore very plain and simple clothes that actually had the most money. So that really affected the way that I perceive people as being wealthy or not wealthy. And it affected who I listened to. So back to the illustration. I used to work for a really big company and the CEO was a very charismatic but unassuming, very wise, savvy kind of guy. And they would have a town hall for all the employees 2 times a year, and they would go through their finances in very, very intricate detail and explain their wins, their losses, their strategy for the upcoming 6 months, kind of where they were. And then afterwards, we go to this fancy country club and have a big party. So the CEO would lead these town hall meetings, and he was the one that would go through in-depth company financials. He had his team of people that would explain their part, and then he would kind of lead the presentation and the strategy. And at the end of each meeting, he would open up the floor for questions. He was extremely charismatic, but not in a suspicious way. He was just very unassuming. He had unassuming charisma. He would hold this town hall in a hotel ballroom, and he would literally walk up and down the aisles and talk to people and say hello. And in a company of like 500, 600, 700 people, with people flying in from all over, we had 11 different offices, international teams in Russia, teams in South America, teams in Canada, and he would know people by name and he would say hello. And at the end of the meeting, he would open up the floor for questions and people would just ask him questions on the fly. And sometimes they would be a little bit not super relevant. He was very gracious in dealing with those questions, but on the whole, they were very sort of insightful and he gave great answers. And I remember one question that he was asked in particular, and this really stuck with me because someone stood up and asked the CEO of a multi-billion-dollar company this question. This person asked the question, "What keeps you up at night?" And the CEO heard that and was kind of like, that's a good question. And he just said very simply, allocation of resources. That's what kept him up at night. He's a CEO of a multi-billion-dollar company. And what kept him up at night was allocation of resources. And I thought to myself, If he struggles with that, then it's okay for me to struggle with that. So I have to say that all of these different areas fall under that one category of allocation of resources. That is my single biggest struggle on my journey to financial independence, is how do I allocate my resources, my money and my time. So under that big struggle, big challenge of how do I allocate my resources, I think about my resources in 4 different areas. So my struggles are in particular in these 4 areas. Number 1, the area of relationships. Number 2, the area of experiences. That includes travel. Number 3, the area of food or groceries. Number 4, which is kind of 3 topics all put in together, that's the area of clothing, personal care, and housing. Okay, so first off, I have to say that the most important thing to do in dealing with any of these challenges is to make a budget for the month, or a spending plan, or some idea of how you intend to allocate these resources. If you're just starting out, it's helpful to be very strict with yourself and to adhere to that plan as closely as you can. That said, the further along you go in your journey, you'll start to notice that certain priorities change and shift in your life. Certain priorities rise to the top and other priorities sort of fall to the bottom. That said, sometimes there's a disconnect between what you would like to have happen and what works on paper versus what you actually find the most joy and pleasure in doing or experiencing. And for me, that's where the challenge and the struggle comes in. I'm not special, I am not unique, and I'm sharing these struggles because I know that they're very common areas of challenge and struggle for many people. So diving into challenge area number 1, and that is relationships. So I'm talking across the spectrum from friendships to romantic relationships and everything in between. This is key because you become like who you spend time with. This is why I make an effort to hang out with really cool people who have very similar goals to mine whenever possible. I aim to cultivate relationships with people who have similar views on finance and financial independence as I do. That said, not everyone shares my views. That's what makes this world so wonderful. Billions of different people with billions of different viewpoints. How do you balance out a relationship where your views on money might not be the same? You might be compatible everywhere else, but your views on money are just not the same. Or what do you do if you're already in a committed relationship with someone who has vastly different views to you? So this is a huge challenge, dealing with money in a relationship and how to allocate resources in a relationship. The way that I've dealt with this in my own life is like this. I try to take advice from people who have what I would like. So if someone has a really great relationship, I kind of try to get under the hood and to get their feedback and their thoughts on what makes a really good relationship. And overall, what I've heard from people who have very successful relationships is to make time for what matters. For me, what really matters is that the people that I care about, A, know that I care about them, B, know that their feelings are important, and C, know that I'll do what I can to make sure that their requests are honored. And that might mean taking separate paths when it comes to specific issues in a relationship, but allowing that health of the relationship in general to be the number one goal. It's a challenging one to negotiate, for sure. A big chunk of addressing that challenge is just to acknowledge it and to, again, honor the strength of the relationship and honor the overall good of the relationship, whether it's a friendship or a romantic relationship, as being the most important thing as you're on your journey to financial independence. Area number 2, where I struggle, is in the area of experiences. How do I allocate my resources when it comes to fantastic experiences, especially travel? So this actually came up for me recently, as in 2 months ago. I ended up taking a trip with a few friends that was paid for. However, my responsibility was to cover incidentals. That would be mostly food. That was an expense that I was not planning for the month of March, and it ended up being a pretty significant expense. I talk about in my I spend too much money eating out video. But overall, it was an awesome experience, and I would have spent 3 times what I spent on that time away. It was 100% worth every single penny that I spent on that experience, but it wasn't in the budget. I did not budget for that experience. So that was a struggle for me at first. At first, I had a little bit of guilt thinking about how much I spent on that wasn't planned. So that was a struggle. But how I dealt with that was saying, I'm never gonna get that time back. So that time spent with those people in that place on that experience was awesome and 175 million% totally worth it. So if we talk about time for money, it was 100% worth that exchange. And so generally how I deal with that challenge of allocating time and money to experiences is to say how much happiness and overall joy will that experience bring to my life. It's another tough one. It's hard to budget for. Area number 3, where I struggle in my journey to financial independence, is in the area of food and eating out. This is a huge one for many people. Dave Ramsey tells a story of a couple in one of his financial peace classes who ran their numbers for eating out. When they wondered where their retirement went, the guy said, well, we've been eating it. We're eating their retirement fund, which hits home. That hits home to me. Because lately I have been doing a lot of experience eating out. That's going to really nice restaurants and not only enjoying the food, but also enjoying the time that I spend with the people there. So that's been a huge struggle lately, especially. The other struggle in the area of food is buying good groceries. Trying to take care of myself physically and feed myself really good quality, healthy food. And sure, there are ways you can eat healthy on the cheap. But by and large, really good quality, healthy food doesn't come cheap. I'm talking things like good in-season quality, fresh produce, good, lean, organic, grass-fed meat where possible, high quality dairy products. I don't eat a lot of dairy, but every now and then I will. And other lean quality sources of protein. These are not cheap, and it's a struggle for me, especially in the grocery area, eating out food budget area, because that category can explode real quick. So I struggle with balancing out feeding myself good quality food versus saving for the future. On the one hand, my goal is financial independence. On the other hand, health is wealth, y'all. So that is a continual negotiation between keeping that number reasonable and also A, enjoying myself, and B, feeding myself good quality food. It's a challenge. So the fourth area is sort of the miscellaneous area, and in that I've put 3 things: clothing, personal care, and housing. On the surface, I know the FIRE community answers to those 3 areas. That's clothing, personal care, and housing. Spend as little as possible. So I know what it looks like to spend as little as possible in each of these 3 categories. And for me, it's a struggle to decide what is me wanting certain things versus the vote for the type of person that I want to become. So in the area of clothes, my question is this: just stay with what I have, or do I upgrade a few key pieces to very high quality basics so that I can begin to shift my mentality towards working for the job that I want to have? This is a challenge. The second area, personal care, similar issue. How do I spend strategically on myself in a way that makes me feel better and bring a better, improved mindset to the world versus saving toward my ultimate goal of financial independence? That's a struggle too. Then the third area is the area of housing. So to kind of update, my mom and I are sharing expenses on a house that she owns right now. She's paying down the principal and we're very close to paying off the house. We do have a sizable amount of equity in this house, so ideally the goal is to build up that equity and sell for us both to be able to do with what we will. Somebody asked the question, wait, you're gonna live with your mom forever? And I'm like, probably not. And the struggle with housing is, how much do we invest on upgrading the current house that we have to make it pleasant and habitable right now, but not necessarily add a whole lot to the value? That's a struggle too. So ultimately, these are just 4 of the areas where I tend to face consistent challenges. I know I'm not alone, and I'm sharing these just kind of as an update on my financial independence journey and where I am right now. My summary and kind of my key takeaway is this, and it's a line from Suze Orman that I really remember and resonated with. So she says, people first, then money, then things. Relationships and investing in people is important. Then building and protecting your wealth and your assets is number 2. And then far behind that is things and the things that you own. I'm not saying it's easy, I'm just saying that's what I do, and that's what I've been challenged with lately. So I hope this has been helpful to you. I hope that this has resonated with you. Let me know in the comments down below things that you struggle with in your journey to financial independence. Thank you as always for watching, and I hope you'll keep watching. Bye.